Hello Year 9, Mr. Wall here. Hope you're fitting well after your Easter break. It's time to get back down to studying our GCSE physics. We've completed the particles topic now. You should have done an assessment on Seneca for me. And now we're going to start the final topic for this year, which is the waves topic part 1. The video that you're watching now is going to talk you through lesson 1. Lesson 2 will be in a second video. In your notes then, for lesson 1 you need the title, The Nature of Waves, and if you're unsure about what I've said or would like a second point of view, you can find the contents of today's lesson on pages 136, 137 of the combined trilogy physics book, or the pages 174, 175 of the specialist physics book. It depends what you're doing next year. If you're likely to do the separate physics, use the second book, 174, 175. If you're likely to do the combined, then obviously use the other book. They can of course be found on the Caboodle website. Okay then, let's get straight into things then. The objective of today's lesson is firstly for you to recall what waves can do, explain the differences between transverse and longitudinal waves, and recall examples of longitudinal and transverse waves. This next slide you will either need to copy out by hand, or I have no problem with you actually printing these slides off and putting them into your notes. As long as you've got a record of what you've been doing, that's absolutely fine with me. So waves and their properties then. First of all, we're studying waves because they're a means of transferring energy from one place to another. So that's what a wave does. It gets energy from one place to another. There are two major categories of waves. The first category is what's called a transverse wave. These are waves where the vibrations that are produced in the wave are actually at right angles to the direction of the wave, or the direction in which energy is transferred. So it helps if you've got a little sort of picture of this, and in class what I'd have done is shown you waves on a slinky. You may have played with these when you were younger, you may still play with them now, I don't know. But you can easily make a transverse wave by attaching one end of your slinky to a fixed point, a door handle for example, and then stretching the slinky out and then moving your hand in an up and down motion like so. That will produce a sort of classic wave pattern. Okay, so when you move your hand up and down, the spring itself, the coils of the spring move up and down like that, but the wave that you produce is travelling at right angles to the direction in which the coils are actually moving. So the coils are moving like that. The wave and the energy that's associated with it is moving from left to right in the diagram there. So that's a transverse wave. Most waves that you're going to study on GCSE will be transverse. So all of the electromagnetic waves, which you'll meet later on in this topic, for example light, radio waves, X-rays, etc., are all transverse. Okay. The second type of wave that you've got to study is something called a longitudinal wave. This is where you produce a wave by moving the slinky, in this case, in a direction where the coils move parallel to the direction of the wave. So the wave once again is moving from the person's hand from left to right here, but the coils this time are moving back and forth like that, parallel to the direction of this line here, the direction in which the energy is being transferred, the direction in which the wave is moving. One extra feature that you should know about longitudinal waves is that where you get a high density of coil, where the coils have been squeezed together, you get what's called a compression. And where they've been stretched, where the distance between the particles, the coils are further apart, you've got something called a rarefaction. Okay. Fortunately for you guys, there's only one type of longitudinal wave that you have to be aware of, and that is sound. So most waves are going to be transverse. sound is an example of a longitudinal wave. There is another one which you might encounter in your geography, which is a primary shock wave from an earthquake, but it doesn't tend to get mentioned too much in your physics. Okay, so make sure that you've got those key points written down, or you printed off this slide and placed into your notes. I'm aware it's quite tricky to draw these, but just do your best. If you're watching the video rather than following the PowerPoint, you might wish to pause the video whilst you make your notes. Okay, having finished the notes then, you might like to test yourself as to your understanding of what we've just talked about. So have a look at the questions on there. You don't have to write them down into your notes if you want to. You can think about them or jot them down enough. I really don't mind, as long as you're getting the understanding of it. So again, I advise you to pause the video while you read and answer the questions, and then we'll go through the solutions together. Okay, hopefully you didn't find those too difficult. Solutions then. First off, what is the difference between a longitudinal and a transverse wave? Well, as we've just said, in longitudinal waves, the oscillations, which is a more scientific word for vibration, are parallel to the direction of wave travel. Whereas in transverse waves, the oscillations, the vibrations if you like, are at right angles to the direction of wave travel. So that would be your answer to number 1, part A. Transverse waves, examples of water waves, waves on a string, waves on a slinky, all types of electromagnetic waves, again for example light. As for longitudinal waves, sound waves, and of course the primary shock waves from earthquakes. Part C, when a sound wave passes through air, describe what happens to the air particles at the point of compression. When you speak, you produce a longitudinal wave. That's a series of compressions and rarefactions. Where you get a compression, the air particles are close together. Question 2, part A. State whether the waves on a rope are transverse or longitudinal. Well, hopefully if you've been following, you'll be happy with the fact that they are transverse. You can't push a rope to and fro to produce a longitudinal wave. Part B, the direction of energy transfer along the rope. Well, the energy transfer will be at right angles to the direction of, I'll say that again. The direction of energy transfer will be from left to right or away from the student, however you can imagine this problem here. And B, part 2, the movement of the knot. The knot moves at right angles to the direction of the energy movement. So again, going back to your diagram of a few moments ago, up here, there we are, look. So the wave on the string is going that way, from left to right, but the knot on a string would be moving up and down like so. Okay then, in conclusion then, you should have learned from this lesson that waves transfer energy from one place to another. In longitudinal waves, the oscillations or vibrations are parallel to the direction of wave travel or energy transfer. In a transverse wave, the oscillations are at right angles, 90 degrees. You might hear the term perpendicular being used. It means exactly the same thing, to the direction of energy transfer. And transverse waves include waves on the string, water waves, radio waves, microwaves, infrared, light, ultraviolet, X-rays and gamma rays. Longitudinal waves include sound waves and the primary shock waves from an earthquake. And that ends the first lesson of waves.